Well, hello there. Welcome. My name is Amanda. I'm so glad you could come today and watch this recording. Today we're going to be talking about vocabulary extension. So we're going to give some suggestions on how to teach and extend our vocabulary. Now, of course, when I say extend our vocabulary, I mean when we're in a session. And of course, vocabulary plays a big part of every lesson. It's a big part in learning a language. And no matter what age or level we have as our student in the class, we're going to have to include some aspect of vocabulary in the lesson. So this is a very practical training session because we encounter vocabulary very frequently. And it's good to know how to be effective at teaching it. And we're going to talk about how we can explain new content. So we can go through vocabulary pages, we can read through the definitions, but how can we explain what those words really mean? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's see what the overview holds for us. So we're going to go through different kinds of vocabulary words. We're going to talk about how we can explain nouns, how we can explain verbs, and also adjectives and adverbs. We'll talk a little bit about how we can teach it to a low-level student, and then how we can really extend with a high-level student. And pay attention as we go through because we're going to have a case study at the end. And even though this isn't a live training session, it's still good to think about what you would do in that sort of a situation. So try and think actively, okay, I'm in this situation, what would I do? How would I teach the words? But of course, I'll give you some of the things that I might do if I was in that situation. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about how to introduce nouns. Now, nouns are probably some of the first words that a low-level student's going to learn. So everyone learns nouns, and that also includes our high-level students too. When we present nouns, especially concrete nouns, we want to try and present the nouns with all our senses. So we want to show visual elements like flashcards, illustrations, pictures, but we also want to try and include our other senses as well. So if we can include sounds, smells, and tastes of certain nouns that we're teaching, that will really help the noun come alive, help the student understand exactly what you're talking about, and it'll hopefully stick in their mind. So how do we teach a noun? Well, the best thing, as we've mentioned, to do is show a picture of it, if you have one, if that noun lends itself that way. A picture's worth 1,000 words. This works with all levels, low and high levels, and especially for low levels because there's not much explaining that needs to be done if you've got a picture. But how can we include sounds? Well, we've got a lot of animals here on this page, so you might include the sound that the animal makes if you're teaching an animal. Now, we do have our sound button included in our lesson classroom, so there's a few animal sounds in here. Use them if you can. So if we're teaching dog, bring up a picture of a dog and bring in a sound. Now, if you are teaching a word that doesn't have a sound, you might have to make the sound yourself, but the young kids are really going to like this. So, dog! And then they won't get confused. For example, some of my students think this is a cat, but if I make the sound, they're going to get the right idea. So it is a good idea to include some sounds just to make sure the student knows what you're talking about. It helps the student know, okay, dog, it's not the word for animal or pet or cat. It's a dog. It's more specific than that. So you can bring in another element. It also makes it a little bit more fun. What about smells? Well, we've got a skunk here. So, yeah, you could bring in an element of smell. Skunk. Ooh, ooh. Skunk. And this will help explain what exactly this animal is. It's not a cat, it's a skunk. What about tastes? Well, this is of course going to work best when you're talking about food, but again, it'll help clarify what exactly you're talking about when you show them an image or a prop. So, banana. 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 Now, then the student will recognize, okay, we're not talking about color here. It's about something that we eat. Also, we might have a word like lemon. We can even show how it tastes. So, ooh, lemon. This will help the student understand what this is if the picture isn't clear, and also it'll show this is a lemon. It's not an orange, it's not fruit, it's not food. The word I'm teaching is this specific fruit. So when we bring in these other elements, it'll clear up what the word is in the mind of the student. It also makes your lesson a little bit more interactive and fun. So those elements work well for any level, but especially our low-level students. But what about our high-level students? Is there a way we can extend on the vocabulary words so that they can practice and it'll stick in their head and they'll really understand what the word means? Well, there's lots of different things we can do. We can create pictures in a student's mind by making a sentence with the noun, but using that sentence to kind of explain what the word is. So, for example, we might have a cute squirrel. She trembled at the sight of the cheetahs. I might go further. I might say something like, the cute little squirrel ran up the tree. So now they can picture in their mind a cute little squirrel climbing up a tree, and it'll help them understand what the word means because squirrels live in trees. So maybe they were thinking it was a mouse or a rat, but when they hear it ran up the tree and it's cute, rats aren't cute, then they'll start to understand, oh, I know what animal that means. All right, shrink this here. Okay. It's also a good idea to teach students the singular and plural version of the word, especially if the word is an irregular type word like mouse or mice. You can do this with low-level students too, keeping it really simple. You might want to say 1 mouse, 2 mice. 1 mouse, 2 mice. For a higher level student, you might say the plural is mice, and just include that there so that the student has a reference later. When they're looking back at their notes, oh, right, this is an irregular plural word. Also, we might use different categories to help the student understand the noun or just practice the noun. If you've got several nouns that you're teaching that are a little bit similar, or if it's a noun that's in a category with lots of other words that they may know, like animals, you might put them into categories. So cheetah, that's kind of a more advanced word, so perhaps we're teaching this to a higher level student. So we might ask, is a cheetah fast or slow? And if they say fast, then you might ask, what other animals are fast? So maybe they'll bring out some of the words that they already know, like a horse is fast. Yes. A polar bear is fast. Yes. Okay. So it helps them make connections in their mind with the vocabulary they already know and with their new vocabulary. Now, usually we have a vocabulary page and we teach the vocabulary on that page, and then we go on and we read the text in the lesson, and usually we see those vocabulary words pop up again. Now, it might be a good idea that when you see those vocabulary words in the reading again, to highlight them and just review, see if they still remember. So perhaps flute was one of our vocabulary words. You might ask again, what does flute mean? What is this? And ask them to review again. And you might even go so far as saying, is this the subject of the sentence? How is it used in the sentence? And that's probably for a very high-level student. But it is good to review as you go through your text just to see if they remembered the words. And if you draw attention to the vocabulary word within the reading, it'll help the student understand the word a little bit better through context as well. We also might want to see or teach how the word is extended to others. So how the word is related to other words, maybe other vocabulary words or other words they already know, or perhaps just other words in the reading. So here we have two vocabulary words. We have flute and panpipe. And actually in this reading it explains the difference between the two. But to emphasize and review again, to make sure the student really understands the meaning of these two words, you might ask, how are these two instruments, the flute and the panpipe, similar? How are the two instruments different? The same with cheetah and leopard. How are cheetahs and leopards the same? How are cheetahs and leopards different? And this will help really clear up in their mind what exactly a cheetah is, what exactly a leopard is, and why we have two different words for animals that are a little bit similar. So this will help them practice their vocabulary and really get it into their minds. All right, so that's nouns. Let's move on to verbs. Now verbs, of course, are action words. So if you've got a low-level student and you're teaching a verb, the best thing to do is to perform the action or use TPR, right? So it's hard to explain verbs in words sometimes, and for a young low-level student to understand it, it might be near impossible. But if you can act it out or even show a picture of someone doing that action, that will be the most effective thing for our low-level students. But what about for higher level students or maybe more advanced level verbs that you can't really act out as much? What can we do? Again, we can make a sentence using that verb. And again, try and make the sentence very descriptive and make it a little bit more clear how the verb should be used and what that verb means. For example, in our lesson plan here, we have the word defend when we're talking about hippos, but it's not a common way to use the word defend. Usually we talk about soldiers defending their country, perhaps, or people defending their country. So when we put the word in a different context, in a different sort of a sentence, it may become more clear for the student, and it helps the student to see how to use that word. Now, you can also put verbs into a sentence when you've got a low-level student too, but just make sure to act it out while you're saying it so they can understand it. So for example, I might say, for the verb eat, I eat a hamburger. I eat a hamburger. So now they can see how it's used in a simple sentence. But if we can use a little bit of TPR, it will help them to understand what exactly I'm saying. So don't be afraid to make sentences even with low-level students. All right, another great way to explain what a verb means is to give alternatives or antonyms. So if it's a word like defend, we might say protect, guard, attack, and that might help them to understand what it means. Of course, we can also put in a real definition there, put it in your notes so that they can have that reference later when they download their notes again. You might say defend means to resist an attack and protect yourself. So the hippos protect or attack other animals that want to come into their territory. So give a bit of an explanation using different words. Don't keep using defend because they don't know what defend means, but if you use antonyms, they might start to understand. We can also analyze the root word, and in English it's very common that we'll have similar type words that mean slightly different things. So we might talk about defend, defense, defendant. Maybe they've heard of some of these other words before. Now defend is the root word, so it works better if you've got maybe the word defendant, then you can explain, oh, the word defend is in defendant. So this is a person who defends someone else. But you might also want to show the difference between these words. You can say defense is a noun. Defendant is a person. Defend is a verb. Defensive is an adjective. So then they can not only learn just one word, defend. Once they get an idea of what defend means, they also know these other related words that they can use later on. Of course, perform the actions in TPR. That's probably the #1 best way to teach a verb, but not all verbs lend themselves to TPR. And then we can get the student to maybe make a silly story if you've got time. If you want to shorten it a bit, just get them to make a sentence with the verb. Verbs, especially because of verb tenses and that they change when you conjugate them, it is a good idea to get your high-level students to try and make a sentence with that verb. You'll find that maybe they seem to understand how to use it, but maybe they didn't really understand it, and it's a good way to test if they know how to use their verb tenses. So if you've got the time, get them to make a sentence with the verb. If they seem pretty confident, if they're, I know, okay, let's try it out. Let's see if you can make a sentence. All right, so that is verbs. What about adjectives and adverbs? Well, adjectives and adverbs are a little bit more advanced way of speaking. It makes your English interesting because you're describing how things are done or what things are like. And the best way to introduce adjectives and adverbs is by using synonyms, definitions, substitutions, or maybe just putting a student within a given context. So let's take a look at this. Now, it's a good idea to link adjectives with nouns. That's how they're used, so it's good to show them, the student, how this adjective is used. So in our story here, we have the word tedious. So we might give them a few phrases or even collocations, words that always go together with this particular adjective. We might say a tedious life, tedious activity. If the word is exciting, we might say an exciting event. And these are adjectives. You can do the same with adverbs. So you can say run fast, rain heavily, and give them a few examples. And this will help them to see how to use it in real life. And it's not just a word. Now we see it as part of a sentence. What I like to do is make substitutions. This helps a student to see how we can use the adverb or adjective in a sentence in real life. How do we apply it? So you might give a blank space to help the student understand where to put the adjective in the sentence. You might give them a bit of a definition. So if we had tedious and we gave them a definition on the previous page, tedious being too long, slow, or dull, tiresome, or monotonous. If this is the definition, I might say something like, Zug's life was dull and tiring. And then Zug's life was, and give a blank. So they can see from the definition that dull and tiring equals tedious, or hopefully they do, so then they can fill in the blank. Zug's life was, and you might say, let's use one word that means dull and tiring, if they kind of don't understand it. And they can take the definition, oh, I know one word for that, and put it in. Zug's life was tedious. You can also apply it to their life. You might ask them a question like, what activity do you find too long and boring? Now we're not really talking about the word tedious, but we're talking about the meaning of the word tedious. So they might say, the bus ride to school. Oh, okay. So you can say, the bus ride to school is tedious. Oh, so now they can see how they feel. And then if I feel something is boring, it's taking too long, I can use the word tedious to sum it all up. So that's how you can make substitutions. You can even use part of the definition, make a sentence, ask a question, and then make the connection to your adjective. Just like our nouns and verbs, we can also analyze the root words here too. So if we have the word exciting, we can talk about excite or excited. Excite, and we can explain to the student which ones are adjectives. This excite is a verb. Exciting and excited are adjectives. But as you know, even though exciting and excited are both adjectives, they're used in different ways, and this is a common mistake, isn't it? So I would probably give an example. And if I feel something is boring, it's taking too long, I can use the word tedious to sum it all up. So that's how you can make substitutions. You can even use part of the definition, make a sentence, ask a question, and then make the connection to your adjective. Just like our nouns and verbs, we can also analyze the root words here too. So if we have the word exciting, we can talk about excite or excited. Excite, and we can explain to the student which ones are adjectives. This excite is a verb. Exciting and excited are adjectives. But as you know, even though exciting and excited are both adjectives, they're used in different ways, and this is a common mistake, isn't it? So I would probably give an example for the students whenever you have this kind of scenario, like boring, bored, exciting, excited, that sort of adjective. That's one's a feeling and one is describing something else. Give an example. Going to Disneyland is exciting. I feel excited. So here they can see the contrast between Disneyland is exciting and I feel excited. All right. Also tediously, tedious. So we can show how sometimes it's an adjective. If it's got an ly, it's an adverb. So you can show them how we have related words, but used in different ways. The teacher's class is tedious. She speaks tediously. So they can see how each is used. You might draw attention to tedious here is describing class. Tedious here is describing a verb, the way someone speaks. We also have friendly. So we can show friend is a noun. Friendly is a person who likes to be around friends, who has lots of friends. Now we have other emotions here. These are also adjectives, some are. And we can even teach these to low-level students using TPR, right? Happy, sad, So we can teach adjectives to low-level students. We can still use TPR. We can use props. We can use pictures. Not every adjective lends itself to this, but those low-level adjectives and adverbs may. So for example, if you've got an adjective like a color, well, we can definitely show colors. Maybe you've got a crayon. You can show the color. Big and small, you can use TPR, big, small. Or you can use props, big, small, big, small. Long and short, long. and a short piece, short. So, I found my short piece. So here it is. Yeah, I knew I had it somewhere. So don't be worried about adjectives and adverbs for low-level students. You can do them as well. Just you have to use more non-verbal cues. Also for your adverbs, if it's fast, and slow. But you may need to use contrast. So use fast and slow so the student can see the difference. If you just say this, fast, the student might think run. So it's good to use a little bit of contrast to show a student, now this is a word to describe how I'm running, instead of just the word run. All right. So we learned nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So let's look at our case study now. We're going to be teaching camping vocabulary. We've got a 9-year-old girl. Her name is Evelyn. She's level 5. The definition of all the new words is difficult for her to understand. So we read them through, but you can tell she doesn't really understand it. So what would you do to introduce the words to Evelyn? Well, what kind of words do we have? We've got camping, but here camping is not a verb, it's a noun. We have campfire, also a noun, and campsite, another noun. All right, well, nouns work well, can be explained well if we use pictures. So that's probably the first thing I would do, and probably the first thing you would do. You can go into the search photos function and maybe get a few pictures. You can even try your hand at drawing. That might work well if you found, oh, there's not really a good picture in here for me to use. There's a bit of space. You can draw a picture. And we've got a bit of a start. We've got a campfire already. But I did find a picture here. So once we have a picture, we might start describing it, make some sentences using the vocabulary. So I might say, she is camping. Nice and simple, but it's nice and clear as well for the student to kind of understand what's going on. Now I might make another sentence that describes the word a little bit better. I might say, my family goes camping in the woods every summer. So now the student knows it's something families can do together. It's in the woods or in the forest, and it's usually something you do in the summertime. So now she can, out of context, start to piece together what camping might mean. And just to test a little bit of comprehension, I might ask her, do you like camping? And see what she says. And if she says yes, I might ask a little bit more. Do you like camping at the beach, in the mountains, or by the river? And see what she says. So this is also helping to explain a little bit more about camping, that you can do it in different places. But it's a little bit more interactive than just telling her what it is. And at the same time, we're practicing using the word. And the more she hears the word and uses the word, the better it will stick in her head. All right, so we went through camping. It seems like she's kind of got it, so let's move on to campfire. Now, campfire is a compound word, so we might want to look at the root word. So we might say campfire. A campfire is a fire at camp. Just to break it up, maybe she didn't notice it, so kind of look at the root word there. Now we can appeal to her senses a little bit by talking about what a campfire smells like or looks like. And also, we've got a picture built in, so go ahead and label it. Label the picture, or maybe ask her, what is this, just to see if she knows first. And then make sure to make notes on the page, so when she looks back later, she will see the campfire and see the word there, and she can definitely make the connection. And then I might ask, what does a campfire smell like? And maybe she will say it smells like wood, it smells like smoke. If she can't come up with anything, you might add that in. Just to help her picture in her mind, oh yeah, a campfire smells like smoke. Is a campfire hot or cold. You can dumb it down for someone if they're just not getting it. Give them some easy questions. Ask them some things about the qualities of a campfire and see if they kind of understand what's going on there. Maybe they can fill in the blank. A campfire is, maybe she'll say bright, lovely, hot, and this will help her think a little bit creatively about the word campfire. And the more she thinks about campfire and uses the word campfire, it's going to stick in their head. And then we have the word campsite. Again, you could break it up. Campsite, a site or place where you camp. So show her the root of the word, that it's a compound word. And you again may draw a picture or show a picture, and that can be very effective. You can say, this is a campsite. What is in a campsite? By asking questions, you can catch to see if they understand it or not. You're also making the boring vocabulary page much more interesting and interactive. All right. And I think that's enough for teaching our camping vocabulary. You don't want to spend too much time on the vocabulary page because it's usually at the beginning of the lesson. You usually still have a lot of material left to go. If you find they're not getting it, spend a little bit more time on the vocabulary. But if they got it as soon as you showed the picture, for example, you don't have to spend as much time. We just want to make sure they understand these words. All right, so that brings us to the end of our training today. I hope you found some of these suggestions helpful, and I hope that you'll be able to extend your vocabulary a little bit more in class so that the students can really understand the meaning of those new words. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.